All right, we're going to take a look here at problem number 5. It says Keo is repairing a wooden climbing tower and he needs to cut 2 crossbars. That is referring to these right here, the crossbars that cross one another at a right angle. It says, what should the lengths of the 2 crossbars be? So we're solving here for 2 different things. We're actually starting by solving for the horizontal crossbar, which I have highlighted in red. And then later on, we're going to solve for the vertical crossbar, which is this one going up and down. Let's start out with that horizontal crossbar though. If you look really closely, you'll see that this horizontal crossbar is actually part of a larger shape, which is a right triangle. That right triangle has a right angle right here in the bottom left-hand corner, and it turns out that we have 2 pieces of information about this triangle. We have the base, and we also have the height. That means that we can very easily solve for the hypotenuse just by using the Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to take a moment to do that here. I'm going to label my 68 as the A side, the height as the B, and the hypotenuse as C. Then we'll use Pythagorean theorem and we'll find that hypotenuse real quick. All right, I just used a calculator to find 68 squared plus 127.5 squared, and that equals the hypotenuse squared. That came out to be 20,880 and 25 hundredths. I take the square root of that value and I have just C instead of C squared, and that comes out to be 144.5 centimeters. So now I have the horizontal crossbar. All that's left to solve for is that vertical crossbar, which is going to go from the very top of the shape down to the bottom. Now, I'm going to back up just a second. I'm actually going to notice a couple of things real quick. First of all, if I look at half of that crossbar, I see that that qualifies as an altitude. It is drawn from the right angle of a right triangle up to the opposite side, which happens to be the hypotenuse. So what's happened here is I've created a similar triangle, and I'll outline that triangle for us in blue. This triangle right here, including the altitude as the height, and part of that horizontal crossbar is the base, and then the base of the red triangle makes the hypotenuse. That blue triangle is actually similar to the red triangle that we just solved. If I look carefully though, I can reflect this triangle up, and it turns out that I have another copy of it just above. What this means is that the vertical crossbar can actually be divided into 2 congruent segments, each of which is the height of the blue triangle, no matter which one you look at, the top one or the bottom one. I'm going to use this to my advantage because I'm actually going to solve for the height of this little blue triangle, and I'm going to double that height to get the overall vertical crossbar length. So let's compare this blue triangle to the red right triangle that we just solved. And just for simplicity, so that I can see the red triangle and the blue triangle side by side, I'm going to refer to the top blue triangle, but we know, of course, that it is congruent and exactly the same as the one below it. All right, so let's see what we've got here. I want to create a proportion that compares the corresponding sides of these 2 similar triangles. Here's what I notice. I notice that the hypotenuse of the blue triangle corresponds with the 144.5 that I just solved for. That's the hypotenuse of the red triangle. So here's what my proportion is going to look like. I'm comparing 68 to 144.5, and that ratio is going to be congruent to the ratio between the 2 heights. And I also know that the height, which is what I'm actually solving for here, half of the vertical crossbar, compares to the height of the red similar triangle, which is 127.5 centimeters. Let's go ahead and solve this proportion to find that height. All right, there we are. We have 60 is the height of the blue right triangle. And of course, the vertical bar itself is actually the sum of the 2 heights of the 2 congruent blue triangles, the other one being right here. And so the overall height of the vertical bar is actually going to be 120 centimeters. Each one is going to be 60.